Hey, Rick here from Rick's Automotive. Not all about you, but I like to be comfortable when I drive. This 2006 Nissan Murano has a driver's seat frame that's broken. Lean left, almost like a permanent gangster lean. So we're going to replace this for the customer. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. Click the bell up top so you don't miss a thing. Okay, so the tools I ended up using for this job. You certainly don't have to use the same tools that I used. I didn't use any electric or any air tools. Definitely would have made my life a little easier in some circumstances, but I wanted to keep it as DIY as possible. So just basic tools, 2 sets. Again, you don't even need to use 2. You could just use one of these guys. I used 2. 2 sets of needle nose pliers. You have standard and a Phillips screwdriver, 3/8 ratchet, a short or a stubby 14 millimeter and a short 12 millimeter, a deep 12 millimeter socket, and then my ratcheting wrenches. I had a 10, a 12, and a 14. 10 was for the battery, and the 12 and the 14 was for the seat frame. So you're definitely gonna, if you do it the way that I did it, where you don't take the entire seat frame or seat bottom apart, I'm not sure of another way you could have gotten those 2 nuts back on the studs when you replace that frame without using an angled gear wrench like that. But you're more than welcome to try without that, but that's just my take on it. So that's the tools that I use for the job. All right, so first the seat has to come out of the car. Now I've got a trim tool. This is not necessary. Usually a lot of times you can just use your fingers, and I'm actually going to try to use my fingers first without using the trim tool, so I can show you how to get the covers off for the 4 14 millimeter bolts that hold the seat to the frame. So you will need a ratchet with a 14 millimeter socket and 2 fingers. To get to the front bolts, we're going to move the seat back all the way to the back position. Now the driver's seat is in the full back position. You've got covers here and a cover here. To get this off, stick both of your fingers behind the rear of the cover. You can hear it kind of click. And just simply spread out the rear, not too far, as you want to break the plastic, but it'll pop right off. And that's the 14 millimeter bolt that you want to remove the seat. Do the same thing on this clip. Just put your fingers on the side, spread, and it pops right off. All right, now that we have both of the front seat bolts removed, let's do the rear. To do the rear, we got to move the seat all the way to the forward position. All right, here's the 2 rear covers. Again, you'll just want to pull on the sides here, and both of these should pop. That one's already loose. Both of these should pop right off. This one's being a little difficult. You gotta lift up on this one. So on the inside you want to pull out. This one you want to pull out and pull up.
Anytime you're messing with seats or anything that has SRS components in it, is disconnect the negative terminal on the battery. That way you don't have a voltage spike and God forbid an airbag goes off on you. You can get hurt. Not only that, if you're lucky enough to not get hurt, it's a lot of money to fix.
All right, now that we've got the seat bolts removed, if you look underneath the seat, there's a wiring harness towards the front of the seat. This wiring harness houses the wiring for your seat position controls, and there's also a yellow wiring harness that is for your SRS. This seat has a passenger side airbag in it, so this wiring for the passenger side airbag. You want to be careful with. Anytime you see yellow on a vehicle and a wiring harness, that always indicates that it's part of the safety restraint system, which is the SRS system. So take extra care when you're working around those yellow wiring harnesses. But so to start, you've got this little guy. This little guy holds the wiring harness onto the seat frame. I just used a pair of extended needle nose pliers to pinch the sides of it, and it comes out pretty easily. And you've got these 2 wires, or sorry, these 2 connectors on the left side here towards the driver's side. And they've got these little square
tabs. You just press on the end of the square tab here, and these slide out of the connector. Now you probably want to use two hands, one hand on one side of the connector and the other side on this tab, and just pull apart. Now these should come apart pretty easy. If you're finding you have to use too much effort, you're probably not pushing this square tab in far enough. The other connector, the SRS connector, comes out a little differently. It's got a tab on the inside of the connector, which, let me see if I can get this apart and I'll show you. You see that came out pretty easy too. So you've got this, if I can show you here. Yeah. This is the side or the back view of the connector. This tab towards the top, you'll want to press down. So it should move that, yeah, it should move down. So if it's all the way down, it should just slide right out. So you definitely want to remove the harness before you remove or try to remove the seat, because you don't want to extend into these wires or pull the wires out of the connector, because then you've got a bigger problem on your hands. So now these are all removed, we can remove the seat. All right, before I take the seat out, I got two tips for you, and you don't have to follow these steps. This is just a little extra effort I'm putting into this repair, just to make sure I don't damage the customer's interior or the paint, so or the seat for that matter. So I'm gonna go ahead and put some tape on the ends of these seat frames. It's just 3M painter's tape. You can get that at Home Depot or Lowe's. Nothing special. Comes off real easy. Doesn't leave any residue behind. You know, putting on all four corners of the seats. That way, I don't have to worry about damaging the customer's vehicle. All right. So tip number 2, tip dos. Before you take the seat out of the car, you kind of want to have an area designated where you're going to place the seat and where you're going to do all the repairs, because there are a lot of parts you're going to have to take off the seat to do this repair. So I'm going to use my toolbox. I've got a drawer pulled out here. I've got tiles laid down on top of the drawer to protect the customer's cloth interior from getting any grease or any kind of grime on the seat. And then I've got my top of my toolbox is all cleaned off. There's nothing on it. That way I can put all the parts off the seat that I remove into a designated area to make sure they all get put back onto the seat. So to get the seat out, we're going to twist the seat, the whole entire seat. We're going to twist it towards the driver's door. So I'm just going to lift up. You want to be, even though the seat frames taped up, you still want to be mindful of where it's making contact. So try and do your best not to allow that to make contact with any plastic interior pieces or even the paint or the door here. So I'm going to twist it just like so. And once you get to the side where it's almost 90 degrees, where it's hanging out, you want to tilt it towards you and be careful of the seat frame that it doesn't hit the door or the dashboard. You'll understand why I put tape on this. And it is heavy and awkward. Like so. Okay, you got the seat over on the toolbox. You can see exactly where this weld broke. You got a close up there. That's supposed to be attached like so, and it's not. So this customer had a permanent gangster lean to the left-hand side. So there's a couple ways you can fix this. The entire seat frame, I believe, is about a $1,200 repair at the dealership, where they replace the entire seat frame. There is an aftermarket company that makes just this piece, and you can see this rod that goes along here. It connects both sides of the seat. You can replace that for a much less expensive repair, or even you can possibly even weld that back together. But this customer selected the aftermarket option. I'm going to show you what that piece looks like. This is the piece the customer supplied, or the part the customer supplied. It looks a little different than the factory one that's in there. It's not a Nissan piece, it's an aftermarket piece. So the holes appear to line up. Everything looks to be okay. So we're going to give it a shot. Now I'm not following a repair procedure here. I'm not following a step-by-step process. I'm really just looking at the seat, and I'm going to take some things off the way I feel they need to be taken off to replace that part. So this may or not be the way it says in the manual to do this. So we're just going to give it a shot and see how it goes. I think I have a pretty good idea of what I want to do to get that off. First you got to start by removing this, and notice there's a wire here. So when you take this off, this is actually holding the wire from hanging down, which may be important in the future, so you don't, nothing underneath the seat grabs it or cuts the wire. So
When we put all this back together, we're going to want to make sure this strap is still holding that wire in. But I'm going to slide this elastic band off. It's on these seat springs. Just simply slides out, and that just kind of hangs over the back there. Next, we're going to take off some of the seat trim. This is on the driver's side, the side with the seat controls. You have a Phillips screw and a Phillips screw, and this lower trim piece comes off. And once the screws are out, you'll see it's got two hooks that's attached to this rod here. That just pops right out. You just pull back, and that whole trim piece comes right off. Next would be the large trim piece. This is the one that houses the seat position switches. You want to disconnect the seat position switches here. That way you can leave them inside of the trim piece when you remove it. By doing that, I'm just going to grab some needle nose pliers and just gently squeeze on these tabs here, and at the same time while I'm pulling down on this, and they should come right out. Okay. So I'm just applying a light pressure, nothing, you don't have to squeeze too hard. They just pop right out. All right, and once you get them out, that same square tab you were pressing on the connectors underneath the seat, these are the same style. So I'm using a screwdriver here because it's a little easier with a screwdriver. You just press on that tab, and then pull at the same time, pull out, and they come apart. Yellow connector is a little different. It's a much larger tab, much easier to press. You can just actually hit your finger and just squeeze, and that comes right apart. So now all three connectors are off the bracket and unplugged from each other. So you got this wiring harness here that we took off. It was the far right in the last video, the last clip of the video. It was the far right connector. It goes through the actual piece we're going to be replacing here. This is the bracket that we're replacing. This is the broken weld. And you can see right there it has this little zip tie with a plastic push pin connection that's going through that bracket. So easy to access. It's just on the back side, and we're just going to use a pair of same pair of needle nose pliers I used to get the other three off, and just push, squeeze, and voila. So now all the wiring harnesses that need to be disconnected on this side are disconnected. Now that these seat switches are unplugged, we can now remove this side plastic trim piece. Should come off pretty easy. There's a little tab. I've already tried to focus and I can't with the camera, so if you look down in here, there's a tab. You just push the seat down past the tab. Once we get to the seat switches, we'll probably want to pull out, it looks like, and there is a section right here. This just should pop out. So just like anything else, you shouldn't have that much resistance. If you do, make sure you just double check, make sure nothing's binding. You don't want to break anything. This is pretty thin plastics. Now that I got the side plastic piece off, I was going to take this front piece off here on the seat. I don't think I have to, because my original plan was to take the entire seat frame off to replace this. But the more I look at it, I think I can get. There's two bolts that run. If I get the camera in there, there's two bolts that run down here and there that run down into the seat cushion. I think I could push this cushion down far enough that I could possibly get those nuts off the studs without actually taking the seat frame off. So that's what I'm going to try to do. These two 12mm bolts. I don't have to take this one off, but I do have to loosen it, and this one has to come completely off because it does thread into that piece we're going to replace. Just going to let that hang there. Now we're on the other side of the seat. We've got a small plastic trim piece. This one's also held in like the other ones were with the Phillips screwdriver. Phillips head screws. We use a Phillips screwdriver to get the screw out. But this one also just pushes down a little bit and pops out. The seat belt buckle The buckle runs long. You don't have to take this bolt out, but these two nuts that go over top of the studs that come through from the frame piece we're actually replacing on the back side, these two are actually going to have to come off. So those are 14 millimeters. So you'll just need a 14 millimeter socket and wrench. This motor is for your seat back, the tilt, the forward and backwards tilt. It's got a motor, and it has a rod, a threaded rod that comes out of it. This rod has a bracket and it bolts to the actual piece of the frame that we're going to replace. And there's two, what looks to be 12 millimeter bolts on the bottom side there. So I'm going to take these two bolts out. Now that that's off, I'm going to get something to tie this up with to get it out of the way. But after this, it looks like all I left to do is just take the studs where it comes through the bottom of the frame, take those, looks like a 12 and a 14 maybe on each side, and those two bottom ones in the cushions, and this thing might just come right out. I did confirm these are 12 and 14 millimeter bolts. So just take all four nuts off. You got two on each side. The black ones are 14 millimeters, and then the gold ones are the 12 millimeters. And once I do that, then I'm going to go ahead and get a bungee cord on this guy and get him out of the way. That way when I go to take the actual seat, the part we're replacing off that back frame piece, this won't be held out of the way. The last two nuts off on this side. This bracket that we took the wiring connectors off in the beginning, you can just push that down past the stud. Bend it a little bit, not trying not to bend it too much, just to where you can get the stud off. And yeah, that thing's loose. It's loose on that side, and it's loose on this side. So this frame should come right out. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and slide the frame up and get a bungee cord around this. Now I've got the frame completely lifted off, or the frame rails, that is, the seat frame rails. They're in the front of the seat is still attached, but this back is fully exposed now. So I'm going to figure a way to keep this propped up while I work on this. The solution to holding up the seat rails here, I just stuck a Phillips screwdriver through this rod we took off earlier. It's got the bolt hole where we removed it. Just stuck a Phillips screwdriver through the bolt hole and into the seat frame. There's a hole in the seat frame as well. Seems to be holding that up pretty well, so that worked out. Now this is where we're at now. If you're following this video, this is how it should look. Everything on the back side here is fully exposed. This is the piece we're going to replace. The only thing that's left, I think, is just the nut on the end of these two studs here. So, and also this back seat piece here has got to come off. So this just comes off easily. You just lift up on it and it pops right out. So it should come right off. That just exposes the seat frame. You might have to push down on that, but that should come off pretty easy. So the only thing left we got to do is just try to get these two nuts off. Okay, so it appears that I am able to get to the nuts on the bottom of these studs. They are 12 millimeter nuts. I've got a 12 millimeter ratcheting wrench that does have a little bit of an angle to it, so that definitely helps get on there. Now you want two things you want to be careful of. All this metal that's around here is extremely sharp. I have been cut, I couldn't tell you how many times I've been cut by seat frames, so it's not really deburred. There's some jagged edges. You might get a metal splinter or even a pretty deep cut, so you want to be very careful. Second is you don't want to strip the nuts on the back side here. The first time I actually put the wrench on here, I thought I had it and I didn't. You could easily strip these nuts. So you want to make sure you've got enough pressure on it, and you want to make sure you're on the nut all the way. And these things are in here, so you have to apply a lot of pressure. I'm sorry, a lot of force to loosen it, but it's coming off. So this might actually work. All right, that sucked, but they came out, so that's good news. We didn't have to take the seat frame off. About 5 or 10 minutes of wrestling with this seat cushion. It was kind of awkward putting my weight on it, trying to get to the nuts, but it did come out. My left arm is on fire right now, so I can't hold this camera much longer, but it did come out, so it's good news. Piece we just took out of the seat. As you can see, the welds there just broken right off. I think it twisted a little bit and bent off. Here's the new piece. You can see here at the very end, they put a little 90 on there, and they welded across a little reinforcement. It's probably a pretty good idea, since here these things are prone to break like this. So, but we'll go ahead and get started on putting this thing back together. Got the new frame piece installed. That wasn't too bad. It took about 10 minutes or so. Definitely hardest part was getting those nuts threaded onto the bottom of these studs. To help out, I took the 2 springs off on the side here. These were installed like so, and just popped them out here using a screwdriver. And once those are removed, there you can see how much room that frees up, which really allowed me to put a lot of weight on the seat cushion, which allowed me to get my fingers back under there. And between the front side and the back here, I had one hand on this side and one hand stuck underneath here. That really helped start the nuts on the thread. So you want to be careful too, you don't strip them. So make sure you got a couple turns on the nut before you put a wrench on it, because that would really suck to have to take all this back apart and retap those. So going forward, I don't foresee any issues putting this back together, so I'm really going to put this on a time lapse of just the installation. If I find anything worth pausing for and explaining, I'll do so. But I'll go ahead and put this back together and then catch up with you here in a little bit. All right, the seat frame is now put back together, just as it was before we touched it. So now we are ready to put it back into the vehicle. All right, just one last tip for you guys when you're putting the seat back in. These 14mm bolts that go through the seat frame into the chassis, you don't want to tighten these up right away. You want to put all 4 bolts in, just finger tight, just get the threads started. Because usually when you go to put the last bolt in, a lot of times it'll look like that where the holes don't line up. So you're going to have to move the seat around. And if you tighten them all up, you're not going to be able to move that seat around. So just a little FYI. All right, just confirming that the seat switches all work properly. It appears that they do. All the bolts are tight. The caps are back on. No more side-to-side movement, so I think this one's a wrap. So appreciate you guys taking the time to watch the video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. Click the bell up top so you don't miss out on anything, and we'll see you guys next time. All right, just going through the motions here, confirming that the seat switches. All right, just going through the motions, confirming the seat switches all work properly. It appears that they do. All the bolts are tight, caps are back on, everything's plugged in, so I think this one's a wrap. I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. Click the bell up top so you don't miss out on anything, and we'll see you guys next time. All right, just confirming that the seat switches all work properly. It appears that they do. All the bolts are tight, the caps are back on. No more side-to-side movement, so I think this one's a wrap. So appreciate you guys taking the time to watch the video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. Click the bell up top so you don't miss out on anything, and we'll see you guys next time.